Okay, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling something almost everyone learning English bumps up against,
Uh-huh.
That moment when you have a thought, a really clear idea in your head, but getting it out in English feels, well, slow. Like there's this extra step happening somewhere.
Absolutely. That feeling, yeah, it usually comes from what we sometimes call the translation loop. You find yourself thinking in your native language first.
Right.
You sort of formulate the idea or the sentence there, and then you try to convert it, maybe word for word, maybe phrase by phrase, into English before you actually manage to speak it.
And that internal conversion process, that's really where the friction is, isn't it? It adds significant time.
It really does.
It's almost like trying to have a quick chat, but you first have to route everything through this little interpreter, and the interpreter is inside your own head.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
by the time you've navigated that whole translation thing, that conversation might have moved on, or, the perfect moment for your comment has just gone.
Precisely. And it doesn't just slow you down. It can also make your spoken English sound a little bit, well, constructed, maybe a bit unnatural.
How so? Like, even if the grammar is right.
Yeah, even if the sentences are technically grammatically correct, when they're translated too directly, they can sometimes miss the natural rhythm or the common phrasing that native speakers just instinctively use. They might sound a bit stiff or just slightly off.
Okay, I see. Like, the word choice might be correct, but not quite idiomatic.
Exactly. Or the sentence structure might just feel a little too formal or too different from how someone would naturally say it.
And the reason native speakers don't have this problem is pretty fundamental, right? They just don't translate.
They don't. A thought, a concept, maybe an observation that just arises, and it finds its expression directly in English. There's no intermediate stopover in another language.
It's a direct line.
Exactly. Their brain has built this direct, really high-speed connection between the idea itself and the English words needed to articulate it.
But here's the core message, the really exciting possibility we're exploring in this deep dive. That translation habit, it's not like a permanent condition.
Not at all.
It's a habit, and habits, well, they can be changed. You absolutely can train your brain to bypass that native language step and start thinking directly in English, building those same high-speed connections.
And the benefits are honestly transformative.
Yeah.
When you manage to train your brain to think directly in English, your speaking speed increases, often dramatically.
Faster, smoother.
Exactly. Your speech becomes smoother, less hesitant because you're not constantly doing that mental searching and converting. And the confidence boost, it's immense.
I can imagine.
The language starts to feel more like a natural tool you can just use, not something you have to painstakingly assemble piece by piece every single time.
Okay, so our mission today is pretty clear then. We're using the material you've gathered to map out exactly how you, the listener, can start making this shift. We're going to try and uncover why your brain defaults to translation in the first place. Then we'll break down the specific, practical steps you can take to build those direct English thinking pathways.
We'll also explore some daily exercises that can make this training really effective, things you can actually do.
Right, and discuss how mastering this internal process helps you respond faster and hopefully more naturally in real-world conversations.
So the goal is that by the end of this deep dive, you'll walk away with not just an understanding of the problem, the why, but a clear, actionable strategy, a set of techniques you can implement, right away to train your brain for faster, more intuitive English thinking.
Let's really dig into the mechanics of this then. How does it all work?
Let's do it.
All right, so let's start by truly understanding the root cause. Why does this translation loop happen so persistently for so many learners? We know native speakers don't do it, so what's different in the language learning process that kind of builds this habit?
It fundamentally comes down to efficiency, surprisingly enough, or at least what the brain thinks is efficient initially. And it's about how your brain handles new information, especially something as complex as language.
Okay. Efficiency. How so? It feels inefficient when you're stuck translating.
Well, think about it. Your brain is incredibly good at optimizing. Its default system, its most established and comfortable network, the one it's been using since you were tiny, is your native language. It's like the brain's operating system, right?
Yeah, it's the home base, the brain's comfort zone, its primary mode of operation.
Precisely. Now, when you first encounter a new English word, let's use a really simple example from the source, like dog. Your brain needs to figure out what this new sound, dog, means and where it fits into your understanding of the world.
Okay.
The quickest, most efficient way for it to do that initially is to link this new word, dog, to the concept of a dog. But how? By connecting it to the word for dog that's already stored securely in your native language.
Ah, okay. So it's not immediately creating a direct link between the mental image of the furry four-legged animal and the English word dog. Not right away.
Not typically, no.
It's creating a link between the English word dog and the native language word for that same animal, like a bridge.
Exactly. It's using the existing strong pathways of your native language as an anchor point, a reference point for the new English vocabulary.
Yeah.
Think of it like building a new room onto a house you know really well.
Right.
You connect the new room, the English word, to the existing structure,
Ah.
your native language vocabulary and concepts first. That's the easiest way to integrate it initially.
And that actually helps you learn vocabulary quickly at the beginning, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly effective for initial vocabulary acquisition. It lets you rapidly understand the meaning of new words by relating them directly back to concepts you already know intimately through your first language.
Okay, so this mapping process, this building of language bridges, it's crucial for getting started. But then down the line, it becomes the obstacle. Is that the idea?
That's exactly the issue. Because once those bridges are built, and especially once they're reinforced through lots of practice, maybe flashcards, linking words, or just thinking that way your brain's default behavior, when you want to express a thought or concept that involves that word, well, it follows the most established pathway.
The path of least resistance.
Precisely. The thought arises, maybe you see a dog. Your brain accesses the concept dog. It then finds the corresponding word or phrase in your native language first. The connection is the strongest, the most automatic, the most practiced.
Right.
And then, only then, does it use that bridge it built earlier to retrieve the English equivalent dog.
So the sequence is, idea popped into head, or
Yeah.
you see something, brain immediately finds a native language word for it. Brain then actively translates that native word into the English word Sari. Then you speak the English word.
Yep. That's the sequence.
That explains the delay perfectly. It's like it's running everything through two different language systems instead of just one.
Absolutely. You're adding those extra cognitive steps of retrieval in one language and then conversion into another. Every single time you want to speak, your brain is potentially doing this complex internal routing through your first language.
And even though the brain is incredibly fast.
It is, but adding those extra steps takes precious milliseconds, maybe even fractions of seconds for each word or phrase. And those milliseconds accumulate very quickly into noticeable pauses, slower overall speech, and that feeling of effort.
Got it. So the brain was being clever and efficient for the learning stage, but that very efficiency created a less efficient pathway for the speaking stage.
You've nailed it.
So the ultimate goal of the training methods we're about to discuss is essentially to build new pathways, like dedicated English pathways.
That's the core idea. We want to train the brain to create and then prioritize those direct links.
Yeah.
Links that go straight from the concept or thought, the image of the dog, the feeling of happiness, the intention to ask a question directly to the English word or sentence needed to express it, completely bypassing the native language detour.
So it's not about destroying the old bridges.
Not at all. Your native language is vital. It's about building parallel, high-speed connections for English.
Establishing English as like a parallel operating system for thinking and expressing yourself, not just a secondary dictionary you look things up in via your first language.
Exactly. Building those stronger, faster neural superhighways specifically for English. That's the aim.
All right, the goal is clear. Building these direct English superhighways. How do we start? What's the very first, most fundamental step the source material lays out for us?
Okay, the starting point is remarkably simple, maybe deceptively so. And it happens entirely internally, inside your own head. You begin by consciously using simple English words in your head as you go about your day.
Okay, simple English words internally.
Yeah. The real power here is that this isn't about speaking aloud yet or interacting with anyone. It's about deliberately introducing English into your internal monologue. You know, that voice inside your head that's narrating your life.
So consciously changing the language of your own thoughts, even just for small things.
Exactly. Instead of letting your stream of consciousness flow purely and automatically in your native language, you consciously interrupt it, or maybe run a parallel process where you deliberately use English.
And the source suggests starting with something really tangible.
Yes, the advice is to start by describing what you see around you silently in English.
Okay, let's unpack that with some more examples. Really paint a picture. The source gives a few, like, the sun is shining. What else? How would this look in different everyday scenarios?
Right, let's flesh that out. Imagine you're just sitting on a bus, looking out the window. Instead of your usual internal commentary in your native language like, okay, almost my stop, or that building is new, you consciously switch.
So you'd think.
You'd think, I am on the bus. The
Mhm.
bus is moving. I see a park. There are many trees. A child is playing with a red ball. That woman has a yellow umbrella.
Just simple, direct observations.
Exactly. Or maybe you're at home making coffee. Instead of just going through the motions, you'd narrate internally in English. I am making coffee. Here's the coffee machine. I need water. Put coffee in the filter. Press the button.
So it's not complex sentences at this stage, just basic subject, verb, object type stuff.
Right. Keep it simple to start. The sky is blue today. That building looks very tall. A bird is sitting on the telephone wire. My keys are on the table. You are consciously labeling the elements of your immediate environment using basic English words and simple sentence structures in your head.
And the crucial part you're saying is that this thought process is happening directly in English. You're not thinking the native word for bird and then translating it.
That's the goal, yes. You're actively trying to bypass that native language intermediary. You see the bird, you access the English word bird and the concept sitting, and you form the thought, a bird is sitting, directly.
You're directly linking the English words to the real-world objects and events you're experiencing in that moment.
Exactly. It's like you're building a new parallel labeling system in your brain. And this system uses English.
That's a really helpful way to put it, a parallel labeling system.
You are creating those direct associations. So instead of that old path, see concept of tree, think native word for tree, translate to English word tree, you're consciously forcing the new path. See concept of tree, think English word tree.
You're establishing a direct neural link between the visual image or the concept and the English label for it.
Precisely. And this is foundational because it starts to make English feel like a more automatic go-to language for just processing the world around you rather than always defaulting back to your native tongue for every little thing.
It's about building the absolute simplest direct connections first, like laying the basic tracks for those superhighways we mentioned.
Exactly. You're creating the most basic automatic links, the very foundation.
Okay, so step one is this internal, simple description of your environment using English. What's the next practical step the source suggests to build on this foundation?
Step 2 makes this process slightly more active, maybe a bit more focused. It pushes you beyond just general internal description to more targeted identification of things. It's about actively naming objects in English whenever you see them.
Okay. Still internal. Or aloud.
It could still be silent, just in your head. Or perhaps a very quiet whisper if you're somewhere private and feel comfortable. The key isn't volume, it's the deliberate act of identification, the conscious naming.
So moving from describing a whole scene like the park is green to focusing on individual items within that scene.
Yes. Think of it as targeted vocabulary practice, but linked directly to the object itself. So if you're in your kitchen, like the earlier example, you would specifically look at things and name them.
This is a refrigerator. Or just a refrigerator.
Either works. That's a microwave. Microwave.
There's a fork. Fork?
Exactly. Or maybe you're getting dressed. Shirt, pants, socks, shoes. Or if you're out shopping looking at clothes, that is a red dress. Red dress. These are blue jeans.
Jeans.
Again, sounds simple. It does. But the source rightly emphasizes that this step is powerful. And it really is. Why? Because the sheer repetition involved and the direct pairing of the object with the English word.
And repetition is absolutely key for strengthening those neural pathways, right? We know that from learning almost anything.
Absolutely. Neuroscientists talk about neurons that fire together, wire together. Every single time you see, let's say, a fork, and you consciously think or whisper fork in English, you're firing the specific neurons that connect the visual concept of that fork directly to the English word fork.
Okay.
The more you do this, the stronger and faster that connection becomes. You're literally making the English word fork the most readily available mental label for that object in that context.
So the more accessible the English word becomes.
The less likely your brain is to even bother taking that longer detour through your native language to find the word for it. The direct English route becomes quicker and easier.
It's like those reps at the gym we talked about. Each repetition builds the muscle, or in this case, strengthens that specific neural connection, makes it the default path.
A perfect analogy. You're making the English word the primary, most efficient label for that object or concept through sheer focus repetition. You're conditioning your brain to default to English for these items.
And the source suggests a specific way to make this naming exercise even more effective, maybe a bit more engaging too, something about a game.
Yes, exactly. This is where you can really start to accelerate the process and specifically target the speed aspect, which, as we discussed, is so crucial for fluent conversation.
Okay, what's the game?
The suggestion is to play a 5-minute naming game. You literally set a timer for just 5 minutes. Then you look around your environment, wherever you happen to be, your room, outside, the office kitchen, and you try to name everything you see in English as fast as you possibly can.
Wow, okay. 5 minutes, rapid fire naming. So not just slowly identifying table, chair, lamp, but really pushing yourself, looking around a room and quickly going book, shelf, dust, sunbeam, curtain, window pane, handle, frame, wall, paint, corner, shadow, wire, socket, floorboard, rug, pattern, line. Just listing everything you can possibly identify in English.
Exactly like that. You're deliberately putting your brain under a bit of time pressure to retrieve those English labels. This isn't just about building the direct link anymore. It's about making the retrieval of that link incredibly fast.
Ah, the speed element forces the direct connection.
Precisely. By forcing yourself to go quickly, you're actively discouraging your brain from taking the longer, slower route through translation. There simply isn't time to translate if you're trying to move that fast. You have to use the direct English pathway if one exists, or quickly try to form one.
That's actually quite clever. It uses the time pressure itself to reinforce the desired behavior, direct, speedy access to the English word. It's a very deliberate technique to break that old, slow translation habit.
Exactly. It makes the direct English pathway the most rewarding one in that context because it's the only way to succeed at the speed game. It builds the habit of accessing English vocabulary quickly, which, as we've said, is absolutely vital for achieving that natural conversational speed later on.
Okay, so we start simple with internal description of the scene, step one. Then we focus on actively naming individual objects directly, ideally turbocharging it with that speed game, step two. Where does the source take us next in this progression? How do we build on that?
Well, the logical next step, once you're getting more comfortable and quicker at accessing individual English words for concepts and objects, is to graduate to forming complete sentences.
Ah, okay, moving up in complexity.
Right. The training moves from just retrieving labels to actually combining these labels into more complex, meaningful units of thought, full sentences. Initially, this is still primarily happening just in your head.
So moving beyond just naming things like bus or coffee to actually expressing ideas or describing actions and states using those labels in a more complete way.
Yes, exactly. You're taking the building blocks, the nouns, verbs, adjectives you practice, identifying and retrieving quickly in the first two steps, and beginning to construct full grammatical structures with them, all within your internal thought process.
So instead of just thinking bus when you see one.
You consciously think about what's happening with the bus or your relationship to it in a sentence. Like the examples in the source, maybe expanded a bit. Instead of just thinking the native word for bus stop or even just the English word bus stop, you practice thinking something like,
I am waiting for the bus now.
right, or this bus is late today, or I hope the next bus comes soon. You're not just identifying the noun, you're expressing your state, waiting, making an observation, it's late, expressing a hope, come soon. All as complete thoughts formulated directly as English sentences in your mind.
Or thinking about simple plans or observations about your day. Instead of just having the thought, I need to buy groceries today, appear in your native language, you practice actively thinking it in English.
Precisely. You'd consciously form the sentences. I need to go to the grocery store later. I should probably make a shopping list first. What do I actually need? Milk. Definitely bread. Some eggs. You're forming sentences that reflect planning and internal questioning entirely in English.
Or even just simple observations about the world around you.
Yeah, like, the weather is really nice this morning, or it looks like it might rain later. I should remember to take my umbrella. You're moving from simple labels for things to expressing more complex ideas, relationships between concepts, predictions, intentions.
And the source material really emphasizes the importance of consistency here, right? Daily practice for this sentence level thinking.
Absolutely. This is where consistent daily effort really starts to compound the effect. You're building fluency in constructing thoughts in English. And the suggestion is to integrate this practice into simple, routine daily activities, things you do every day without much conscious effort.
Why are those routine activities particularly useful for this sentence level thinking practice? What's the advantage there?
It's because they are familiar, and they often require less active mental processing compared to, say, trying to solve a complex work problem or engaging in a really demanding task.
Right, your brain isn't fully occupied.
Exactly. When you're doing something relatively automatic, like commuting on that bus, cooking dinner, washing dishes, cleaning the house, maybe even taking a shower or getting dressed, a portion of your brain is often kind of free. It's not fully engaged in the physical task.
That makes sense.
This is the ideal time to redirect that available mental energy towards deliberately practicing forming English sentences. Sentences about what you are currently doing, seeing, hearing, or even just thinking about, all within that low-pressure environment.
So while you're making breakfast, you might be consciously thinking, okay, I am making eggs for breakfast today. I should probably toast the bread now. I like my eggs scrambled, not fried.
Exactly that. Or, while you're getting ready in the morning, I need to choose my clothes for work today. It looks a bit cold outside this morning. Maybe I will wear that blue sweater. You're essentially narrating or planning your actions using full English sentences inside your head.
Okay. So these routine moments provide frequent, low-stakes opportunities to practice sentence construction directly in English, building fluency and forming complete thoughts without the pressure of having to speak them immediately to someone else.
Precisely. It's about making English the language of your internal description, your internal planning, your moment-to-moment narration of your own life.
All right, this progression makes a lot of sense. We've gone from simple internal labels for things to actively naming objects, especially with speed, and now to forming full sentences internally during routine activities. What's the final step the source suggests for this internal training sequence? Where does it lead?
This is the step the source points to as where it gets really interesting. And I think it is because it directly prepares you for interaction. It's about simulating conversation.
Simulate.
This practice involves having what the source calls silent conversations in your head.
Okay. So imagining talking to someone else, anticipating interactions and practicing them internally.
Precisely. You actively create hypothetical conversational scenarios in your mind. Or maybe you replay a conversation you had recently, thinking about how you could have responded differently or more quickly in English. And then you mentally formulate the entire dialogue, both your part and what you anticipate the other person's likely part would be, all in English.
Okay, let's really break down that coffee ordering example provided in the source again, but maybe flesh it out even more, showing the internal process in more detail.
Okay, good idea. So you envision yourself walking towards or maybe into the coffee shop. The very first internal thoughts might be about preparation and anticipation, right?
Right.
You might think, entirely in English, okay, I'm going in the coffee shop now, it looks busy, what do I need to say, how will this interaction probably go? You're mentally setting the scene and preparing yourself.
Then you actively formulate your opening line in English in your head.
Exactly. You mentally construct the English sentence you plan to use. The source gives, I'll say, hi, can I have a latte, please? Or maybe you practice a variation. Okay, I think I'll ask for a medium cappuccino today.
You've practiced generating that specific request in English.
But a real conversation isn't just your opening line, right?
Yeah.
You need to anticipate the response.
Absolutely. And this is a really key part of this particular practice. You have to imagine what the barista, in this case, is likely to say back to you in English.
Okay.
Based on, countless common coffee shop interactions, you might think, okay, the barista will probably ask, for here or to go? Or maybe, what kind of milk would you like? Or even just anything else for you today. You're mentally running through the probable English questions you're going to face in that situation.
And the source used the example. You imagine the barista asking, do you want it hot or iced?
Right. So you anticipate that specific question. And then comes the crucial next step. You practice your response to that imagined question, again, entirely in English, inside your head.
Okay, so you think. You formulate your reply mentally. Okay, if they ask hot or iced, I will say, hot, please. Or maybe you anticipate another common question and practice for that too. And then they might ask, do you want whipped cream on that? And I'll say, no, thank you. Or they'll probably ask cash or card. And I will say, I'll pay by card, please.
You are rehearsing the complete potential back and forth exchange.
Exactly. The whole mini dialogue.
I can really see the immense value here now. You're not just practicing isolated sentences anymore. You're practicing the dynamic flow of a real conversation.
That's it.
You're anticipating common questions, formulating relevant and quick English responses to those questions, and mentally running through the entire likely script before the real interaction even happens.
Exactly right. And the direct benefit which the source highlights clearly, is that by consistently practicing these imaginary conversations in your head, you are actively preparing your brain for those real interactions when they occur.
You're pre-building the necessary neural pathways for those specific conversational turns. It's almost like practicing your lines before going on stage for a play.
That's a fantastic analogy. It's precisely like that, mental rehearsal.
And so when the actual conversation occurs, when you actually walk up to the counter, your brain has already done a lot of the heavy lifting, hasn't it? It's already formulated the English sentences for those expected questions and your planned responses.
Precisely. You won't need to freeze and translate in that moment because you've already established and strengthened the English pathways for that specific predictable scenario
Which allows your responses to be much faster, more automatic.
and feel much more natural, both to you and to the person you're speaking with. It significantly reduces the cognitive load, the mental effort required in the moment of the actual conversation. It's a really powerful form of mental rehearsal that directly translates to improved performance when it counts.
Okay, this makes so much sense. So these 4 steps we've walked through, starting with simple internal description, progressing to actively naming objects, especially with that speed game, then thinking in full sentences during routine activities, and finally simulating complete silent conversations, they really form a cohesive and progressive system.
They do.
A system for systematically retraining your brain away from relying on translation and towards direct English thinking.
That's the comprehensive approach the source material lays out for us, yes.
Yeah.
You start with the most basic internal units, single words linked to concepts. Then you gradually build up complexity naming sentences, interactions, always focusing on strengthening that direct link between the concept or the situation and the English language needed, bypassing that native language detour entirely.
It's a clear path forward. Now, the source also brings up a really interesting cultural point that kind of underscores why this focus on speed and direct thinking is particularly important for people using English, especially in certain contexts.
Yes, it does shift the perspective slightly, doesn't it? It moves from the internal mechanics of our brains to the external social context of using the language.
Right.
And the point is made quite clearly that in many English-speaking cultures, maybe particularly Anglo-American cultures, but likely broader too, thinking quickly and responding relatively fast in conversation is often seen as, well, a valued skill, sometimes even an expected one.
It's not just a matter of pure linguistic efficiency, then. It's also part of the conversational etiquette or the expected rhythm.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. The source observes that in many everyday situations, people just don't tend to have long, silent pauses in the middle of a conversation. They don't necessarily wait extended periods for a response.
Huh.
There's often an expectation of a reasonably quick reply to keep the conversation flowing smoothly.
And this is probably most evident in more casual conversations, right? Like friendly chats, informal discussions at work, that kind of thing.
Precisely. The source specifically mentions casual settings, highlighting that in these environments, there's often a strong expectation to answer, pretty fast and naturally. Think about the pace of banter between friends, or a quick interaction at a shop counter, or just small talk. The rhythm is often quite brisk.
And if you pause for too long in those situations, even if it's just because you're internally translating,
It can really disrupt that rhythm. The source notes that a long pause, especially an unexpected one, can make the conversation feel awkward. It creates this kind of void.
yeah,
And other participants might feel compelled to jump in and fill that void, or they might misinterpret the pause. Depending on the context, it could inadvertently signal hesitation, maybe a lack of understanding, perhaps even disinterest or disagreement, even if none of that is intended.
it just interrupts the natural, easy back and forth flow that usually characterizes comfortable conversation in those settings.
Exactly. It breaks the cadence.
So understanding this cultural dimension adds a layer of maybe practical urgency to the brain training techniques we've been discussing.
I think it does, yes.
Training your brain for speed and directness isn't just about achieving grammatical accuracy or personal ease. It's also about being able to fit more comfortably into the expected rhythm and dynamics of everyday English conversations.
Exactly. It directly links the internal work you're doing, practicing those silent conversations, playing the speed naming game, to the external goal of participating smoothly and comfortably in real-world interactions.
The faster and more automatically you can formulate those sentences and responses in your head using the techniques we've outlined.
The more natural and effortless you will sound and probably feel in actual conversations, especially in those cultural contexts where conversational speed and flow are implicitly valued.
It's really about achieving genuine conversational fluency, isn't it? not just linguistic accuracy on paper.
Precisely. Fluency in this practical sense encompasses not just knowing what you want to say, but being able to access it and express it at a speed and rhythm that allows for smooth, natural, comfortable interaction within the given cultural context.
Okay, so to kind of bring it all together then, the overarching message from the source material seems really clear and actually quite empowering.
I agree.
If you, the listener, want to move beyond that constant translating in your head and achieve a more natural flowing fluency, the key is to make practicing thinking directly in English a consistent daily habit,
Yes.
integrating it into your life even, and perhaps especially when you are not actively speaking aloud to someone else.
Yes, that internal work is the crucial engine driving external performance. By consistently building and strengthening those direct links between concepts and the English language, you build the automaticity, that speed of access, that allows you to bypass the translation step and respond quickly and naturally when it's actually time to speak.
This deep dive has definitely provided a really clear roadmap, I think. We've hopefully understood the why behind that frustrating translation loop, and we've explored these very practical, progressive steps for training your brain to think directly in English instead. And we've also seen why it matters in terms of conversational flow, especially culturally.
And the great news, as you said, is that you can start implementing these techniques immediately, like today, in your daily life. They don't require special equipment or classes.
Absolutely. So based on everything we've explored today, let's reiterate the three-part challenge that's presented in the source material. This is for you to put into practice, starting right now if you can.
Okay, step one, take just 5 minutes today, maybe right after this, and play that speed naming game. Look around wherever you are right now, your room, your office, maybe outside if you're walking, and name objects you see in English as fast as you possibly can for 5 straight minutes. Really push that speed. See how many you can get.
Okay, step 2. Choose a simple, routine, daily activity that you'll do today or tomorrow. Maybe preparing a meal, doing the laundry, your commute to work or school. While you're doing that activity, consciously practice thinking in full sentences about what you're doing, what you're seeing, or maybe what you're feeling silently to yourself in English. Narrate the process. Describe the steps, the objects, your thoughts, all as complete English sentences in your head.
And finally, step 3. Take a moment later today, maybe when you have a quiet minute, to imagine a short, common conversation you might realistically have soon. Perhaps ordering something simple, asking for directions or basic information, or just a brief chat with a neighbor or colleague. Run through that imagined conversation entirely in your head. Formulate both the questions you think you might be asked and your potential English responses. Rehearse that likely back-and-forth exchange internally.
Try those 3 steps, maybe even just for one day, and see what you notice. See how it feels to consciously, deliberately shift that internal language away from translation. And, we'd genuinely love to hear from you about this. Do you often catch yourself translating in your head? I mean, it's such a near universal experience for language learners, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Almost everyone goes through it.
And if you already try to think directly in English sometimes, what techniques do you use and what results have you seen from that? Sharing experiences can be really helpful.
Absolutely. And remember, this kind of deliberate internal practice, even though no one else sees it, really lays the essential foundation for external fluency. It's the crucial unseen work that makes actually speaking English feel easier and more natural over time.
And the learning journey definitely continues. Building on this core idea of strengthening those direct links and making vocabulary more automatic and accessible, tomorrow we'll be diving into another powerful technique that was mentioned in the source material: how to effectively use strategic repetition to reinforce your learning and really make new words and phrases stick in your mind more effectively.
That sounds like the perfect complement to today's thinking techniques.
Right.
Because it's one thing to practice using the words you know by thinking in sentences, but it's another crucial thing to make sure those words are firmly embedded in your memory in the first place and readily accessible when you need them quickly. That sounds like a really useful deep dive, too.
Definitely don't miss that one. Until then, keep exploring, keep practicing these internal thinking techniques we discussed today, and try to enjoy the process of building that direct personal connection with the English language.
Keep talking, keep practicing those silent conversations, and absolutely enjoy learning English.
And maybe, just as a final thought to leave you with, as you go about your day today and in the coming days, try to frame this shift not just as a mental exercise, but perhaps as Genuinely welcoming English into your innermost thoughts, your internal space.
Yeah.
If you really commit to consistently letting English participate in your internal monologue, using it to describe your world, to structure your plans, to rehearse your interactions directly in the language, what does that fundamentally change about how English feels to you? What happens to your personal relationship with the language when your own internal voice actually starts speaking English more often? Something to ponder until our next deep dive.